Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. In today's video, we're going to be comparing the iPhone 15 Pro against the ZV-E10, but more specifically in pictures. If you want to see a more general comparison, I made a video a couple weeks back comparing video, low light, and much more things. So you can check that out. I'm going to leave a link in the description. But for today's video, I wanted to compare specifically pictures. So I went on a trip. I took my camera and my phone, of course. And I took a bunch of samples, both in RAW on both devices. So, without further ado, let's get right into the comparison. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna notice is that they're not like specifically the same size. That's because the ZV-E10 takes pictures in 3:2 and the iPhone takes pictures in 4/3. But beyond that, the differences are going to be more or less the quality of the picture and all of that stuff. We're just going to start with default settings. So this is basically, I imported all of them into Lightroom and just exported them. I didn't do anything to them. I didn't tweak them. I didn't edit them. It's just default settings out of RAW. So overall, looking at them side by side, the first thing I noticed is I like both very, very much. But I think the colors overall are a little bit better on the iPhone. I think it's more true to life to how the building looked that day. But let's zoom in to see which one has more detail. Okay, so here we can start seeing the difference. So since this is the telephoto lens on the iPhone, it's only 12 megapixels. And we can start to see the difference. For example, here in the tiles on the roof, you can see there's a lot more detail on the ZV-E10. And right next to the tiles, there's sort of like a collection of fruits that's like sculpted into the structure, and we can see those with a lot more detail on the ZV-E10. Same with the clock. And yeah, I think this is going to be very, very similar results for all the pictures with the telephoto lens, but it will be interesting to see the comparison between the main sensor, which is 48 megapixels, against the ZV-E10, which is 24.2 megapixels. Okay, so now we're in the main sensor, and it's very similar to my first conclusions, which were the iPhone picture. I think overall looks better. I think it does a little bit of trickery, software trickery, to manage the highlights a little better. And I think overall it gives off better skin tones in the people and all of that stuff. But if we do a little bit of zoom in, we can see that, for example, the windows in the back building, very beautiful building by the way, we can see clearly the separation between the glasses in the windows in the ZV-E10, but it's a little bit harder to see on the iPhone 15 Pro. It's also very important to say that even though I like the iPhone's look default better, you can still tweak both pictures to look very similar to each other, which is something that we're actually going to see later in the video, so keep on watching. Okay, so here I think highlights are very similar. I think I actually like the highlights on the ZV-E10 a little better, but I do prefer how the shadows look on the iPhone. I think they're just a tad dark on the ZV-E10, but something very interesting happens here when we zoom in. Here, I think detail looks a lot more equal. So I still think the ZV-E10 has a little bit more detail. We can see that in the palm leaves here, but I think it's a lot closer. This is because of the main sensor. I think it's gonna look a lot better. It's gonna be changing for certain situations. So for example, in the previous picture, I think it was a lot better on the ZV-E10, but here I think it's a little bit more equal. Okay, so this is, I think, the first picture that I prefer the look on the ZV-E10 by default. I think this is because the highlights do look a little bit better. They look a little brighter, but I like the look overall. I think this is going to be down to preference, but I do like the ZV-E10 a little better. And now I'm just going to show side by side a couple pictures because I've taken a lot of pictures. And then when we get to some more interesting results, I'll talk again. Later in the video, I'm going to do a blind test, but before we get to that, I want to show you guys portraits. So portraits, I think, are going to be one of the most differentiating factors between a smartphone camera and a real camera. That's because the bokeh, or the depth of field that the camera will generate, is going to be much greater than a cell phone camera. That's simply because of the size of the lens. An iPhone just simply can physically not do that subject separation as well as a camera can. Just by looking at this picture, you can already tell. You can see the difference between the subject separation on the ZV-E10 versus the iPhone. As you can see, the person here is completely in focus and the rest of the background is completely blurred. So that's one thing that the iPhone simply cannot do. There's a little bit of subject separation here on the iPhone, but it's very minimal and it's almost not noticeable. Now, zooming in on this portrait, I also noticed that the details in her hair are very bad on the iPhone. The iPhone clearly lost a lot of detail here. Meanwhile, on the ZV-E10, the details are very, very good. I have a couple other pictures showcasing the difference in portrait between the ZV-E10 and the iPhone. So I'm just going to show you those side by side, and then I'm going to go into the blind test. So starting the blind test, I'm going to have a couple of pictures side by side of the iPhone and the ZV-E10. I'm going to assign a letter, A or B, to any of them. So guess in the comments how many you got. Looking at the first edited photo, I tried to make it look the same on the iPhone as the ZV-E10, but the thing is I use a couple of filters I have on Lightroom to make the ZV-E10 picture look, and I try to match it so it's not going to be equal. But I think you can see that I managed to make the iPhone look very similar to the ZV-E10. I think overall the iPhone RAW capabilities are very good, and you can manage the highlights, whites, shadows really well. For the second picture, I think it's even harder to tell here which is which. I think they both look amazing. For the third picture, I think it was a little bit harder to match them, but I still think they both look really good. And finally, for the last one, I think they look almost the same. They both look really, really good. I really like this picture. And overall, I'm happy with both results. So, my conclusion here is the iPhone 15 Pro is still a very good camera, but overall, I still prefer the ZV-E10 look in almost all the pictures. But even though the ZV-E10 is still my preferred look, I think the iPhone is a very great starter, and it will get you some practice before you get a more capable camera like the ZV-E10, or maybe you could go to a 6700, which is the new APS-C, which is really good, or you could get a ZV-E1 maybe. But I wanted to make this video for people who are on the fence about buying a new camera and they already have an iPhone. If you think the difference is good enough for you, well, I hope I helped you in any form. If you find the video informative in any way, please give it a like, subscribe if you enjoy the content, and please share the video with your friends. That'll be all for me. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next one.